Okay, hello, and welcome to the Painter Pen Quarterly Slush Pile. So glad that you're tuning in to listen to us. The us will be defined in a moment, but what we're about to do is discuss some poems that were submitted to the Painted Bride Quarterly, uh, i.e., have an editorial meeting right here for you. And we'll be voting on the work right here, and it's all in order to illustrate to you our editorial style, which is democracy above all else. So, without further ado, well, we're all at home, and that's no big surprise. We don't have to talk that much about it. I am feeling like I really must get my office out of my bedroom floor, and I'm thinking about even just squatting in another room instead of living up in my turret all the time. Uh, but that's where I am. I'm up in my turret, and we are having a tropical storm that right now we must be I'm gonna have to ask the New Yorkers what it's doing for them. Right now, we must be on the fringe. There's just showers, but there is a storm coming through the northeast of the USA today, August 4th. Who knows when this will get? Maybe the world will be really different. Maybe it'll be post November 4th by the time we publish this.
Doesn't
What
it
do you
seem like you can count on the world being an entirely different place if you just wait 3 weeks? Since this year started, doesn't it just seem like if you just wait a month,
Yeah.
everything you thought was important last month will no longer be important. And we will
Yeah.
have moved to an entirely new set of issues, all of which have been festering for generations. And how were you not paying attention to them? Why were you so stupid last month?
Teresa, why don't you say where you are?
The prophet that you
I try to keep it quiet.
Schneiderman. And so I'll bounce it down to you, and we'll just bounce all over the place since we're all over today.
I'm trying to be discreet about this information, but I am actually in Florida. I am at a residency in Florida writing a play, and I'm on the beach and remaining entirely socially distanced. And I drove here so that I wouldn't have to be on an airplane. And I'm being very productive, but I am in Florida. And actually, we missed the storm entirely. The storm was supposed to really batter us, and I was totally prepared for power outages and flooding and isolation, and actually it just moved in the other direction.
Yeah. But as soon as I said that, now I'm hearing more of like sheets of rain happening out there. So if I should disappear, it won't be raptured. Trust me, I'm not as good as Marion and Samantha. I will not be raptured. I will just be freaking without power.
You'll be on your way to Oz.
Maybe. That'll be all right. We all know what to do when we get there this time, right? I don't even know if Marion and Samantha are together anymore. Where are you guys?
You're not. So speaking of the rapture, I'm in a place where my Wi-Fi is a little bit unstable. So if I, sort of trance in and out, it's because of the rapture. I'm actually on the NYU Abu Dhabi campus. I had to go through step after step after step of protocol and security clearance, and I managed to get in my office today. So I'm thrilled about that. And Samantha, where are you?
I am in Dubai, so closer to Marion than the rest of you, but still about 2 hours away. And that's all I have to say.
All right. Then we'll bounce it back to America. And I think Alex is in New York, but he might have a surprise for us as well.
Oh yeah, I'm the only New Yorker in New York, and I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. But I don't know when this will be published. Hopefully, I'll find a place by the time this is published. Is that a good goal?
Yeah.
Or we can date this podcast. But right now on the porch, I don't know if it's going to rain. It's gray skies right now. It might rain during lunch, but that'll be like 1 or 2 o'clock or something like that. So right now I should be good.
Good. Well, all right. I think we're just ready to roll right in. We have several poems from July Westhale to look at today, and thank you, July, for allowing us this opportunity. Who would like to read the first one?
I can take it.
All right, Jason.
Rotten apples returned to Harvard's glass flowers exhibition. What you have heard is true. Something rotten once got us from our houses, from our beds, where what was there may or may not have been. Remember, my darling, my sweet, that a blistered and blackened thing a thing representing life, sin itself was a cause for art, gave a man, many men, a lineage of pride. The moon rose tonight as usual, no spore-filled scab, as ivory as the cut belly of an apple sliced to share. Nothing noxious to point to, say, you. The world of museums and love are, as it turns out, through the machinations and designations of man-made things defined by abstractions, security, beauty, even in our worst days. One day, Blaschka told his son, yes.
Well read. Wow.
Woohoo.
So Jason, as you read it, were you adding the pace to that, or did the poem make you read it that way?
Oh, those were the line endings. Yeah, no, I think the poem paces itself really nicely. It really kind of like works against the syntax in a really beautiful way.
Mm-hmm. So full disclosure, I had no idea about these glass flowers. I didn't know that Harvard had a glass flowers exhibit, and I didn't know much about them at all. Did anybody else have you guys heard of these before?
My mother was obsessed with the glass flowers. She really wanted to see the glass, like the glass flowers at Harvard were like on her bucket list because they were and weren't on display sort of at various times throughout our lives. I don't think I've seen the glass flowers. I think I've seen the glass aquatic creatures.
Okay.
And I've seen pictures of them. It's possible we visited them when I was really young because my mother was like really, really into them. But it was also like the difficulty of seeing them was part of the appeal of them.
In general, or to your mother?
I think in general, but also to my mother.
Okay.
I don't think my mother would have expressed that though. I don't think she would have thought of like, I don't think, to my mind, her sort of like, you know, excitement about them had to do with the unavailability. But I think to her, she just thought of them as something she really wanted to see.
Well, thank you. And it's mostly because I'm ignorant of this. I just didn't know that these flowers were, I think they were made in the late 19th century, and that the one day Blaschka told his son yes. But the first time I read that, I had no idea what that was a reference to. Like, it was almost like the poem and the poet speaking to herself, or inside the universe of the poem. But that's actually the artist, right?
Yeah.
Or the designer of the flowers. Yeah.
Well, it's multiple generations of artists. It's like so it's like 4 generations of glass artists who kind of passed down this knowledge, enhancing with each generation as they kind of invented their new techniques. And so, but Blaschka, or the last Blaschka was the last one. He had no children. And so the skill died with him.
So the yes is yes, it's your turn.
I think so. That's how I read it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had to look it up, and that title is the title of a video. The exact word is that comes up on your first search. If you put in glass flowers Harvard, you get Rotten Apples Return to Harvard's Glass Flower Exhibition and a video about the rotten apples. But any poem that ends with the word yes is going to woo me. I'm gonna say yes if I hear it end like that. Oh, watch, now we'll get a lot of that. Yeah, so I didn't even need, I was enamored enough of this that I didn't need to know everything, but it was so much nicer when I did.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, for me, is the sweet spot. If you refer to something and I don't know it, I don't mind if I don't need to know it. Right? And then the knowing makes it richer. That's always a nice trajectory for me with a poem.
I think well said, right? And there's something about the way sometimes, like, the not knowing makes you curious, and then you go in search of, right? And then get smarter. And then the poem becomes like, man, it's like a knowledge machine, right? Like it's sort of in this ekphrastic spot, right? Where it's talking, it's a poem like in conversation with or about that exhibit, right? And if you're drawn in and curious enough to do exactly what we said, just type the title in, suddenly it's like layers and layers of information, and like it's like a dimensional reading. of the piece, highlighting the sort of intricacy of the thought process here that I will say on first read, I was kind of pushed out because I didn't know, but then leaning in, it just rewards and rewards and rewards the rereading.
I really like the juxtaposition of museums and love, and the idea of that being about security and beauty, and sort of playing with that other line about gave a man, many men, a lineage of pride, and kind of thinking about, you know, when we talk about the controversies of museums and, you know, who owns what and what goes where, and then also kind of love, right? And like who you marry to can also be something that becomes prideful, like the right type of person, and these kind of things. So I agree with you, Marion, that like it kind of just rewards rereading, which I think is exciting.
Yeah, and now that you guys told me that Blashka, there are many of them, like now that line just got deeper. Gave a man, many men, a lineage of pride, right? It's actually talking about the generational craftsmanship, right? Beautiful. Interesting.
And also it like weirdly gives pride to like the people who house it, right? Like even if they didn't create it, like Harvard alum and like people who are connected with Harvard. So it's almost like the, you know, like the flowers aren't blooming, but this like pride continues to like blossom forever, weirdly.
You know what though, I love that is such a resonant idea, whether it's in the intentions of the poem or not, right? But security, beauty, even in our worst days, right? That museums and love, institutions like Harvard, right, can protect those things. Like, and I say this, you know, we're recording this in what I like to call the Sunday night of the year. It's August, right? Fall is coming, September's around the corner, masters will start, right? So like, and I think all of us are half expecting what institutions call melt. Like, you know, we're expecting students to take a gap year. We're expecting students not to come to university. And yet the numbers are showing something different. Like kids want in, right? They want security, beauty, and even in our worst days, love.
Yeah.
Right?
And I also love that it's the rotten apple. You know, there's this glass rendering of something disgusting that if you found in your crisper, you'd be like, ah! You know, you'd have to put on gloves to throw it out. It's so disgusting. And then you're like, you know, take the trash out right away because it's going to like, you hope it doesn't get the other apples. But that by being kind of rendered in this other material, by being transformed or transubstantiated into this glass object, it becomes, you know, this kind of venerated thing that you wait in line to see, that you're excited to have access to because it's so rare. And so I thought that was also like a really nice kind of thing underneath it. And, you know, and what you have heard is true. Like it's such an interesting opening. I didn't look it up, but I think I mean, that's the beginning of Carolyn Forcher's The Colonel, right? What you've heard is true. So I was sort of expecting something dire, but then like it sort of becomes about the question of access, right? That this kind of like beauty that's being held under these kind of very necessary circumstances.
The stanza that starts with the moon rose tonight as usual. I'm thinking about the way Jason was just so viscerally reacting to the thought of a rotten apple. And I just love that moment of the beautiful apple, as ivory as the cut belly of an apple sliced to shreds. What a beautiful way to describe a whole apple. You know, I kind of like that we got to see that for a second in the middle of this. Nothing noxious.
Point to say.
Should we vote? Should we?
We've got a couple more poems in the pile here, so
we have more poems.
Let it get our thumbs up. Kathy, you want to?
So who's the prophet now?
Up and thumbs. I don't know what I meant.
Thumbs up. Let us vote. Let's have some dramatic tension. Let's taffy pull this for a second. Listeners, what will happen next? One. 2.5, 3 votes. And it's unanimous. July Westhale.
I am so not James Bond.
Who is?
All right. All right.
Okay,
Wrenn.
so now we're going for American literature. Yes.
Here we go. Yep. I'll read it, but hopefully I won't get raptured. And if I get raptured, we'll figure it out.
I'll
Okay.
jump in, honey.
You'll become a.
Huh?
No. It's making a joke and I forgot the words, so don't even.
Alex, I
It's
love
an
you.
erasure poem. If you get raptured, it'll become an erasure poem after.
That's
Okay. Okay. All right. So Slushies, when you look on the show notes, the difference between these poems is so radical, right? American literature is like long lines, almost prose blocks. Fascinating. Ready? American literature for Joey. The silver lamp, the ravishment, the wonder, the darkness, loneliness, the fearful thunder. John Keats. There's a billboard with Route 66's version of June Cleaver holding a pie underneath block letters, homemade pies, which is how dry towns get their jollies, I guess. We buy coffee in cups so thin that Joe becomes us and we never regain our human shapes. And I say to you, I wonder where they keep the half bull man. And you shotgun back, I've spent my life asking that, like the sharpshooter you are. Who wouldn't want to be the son of a bull and a damned woman? We are all sons of bull and damn. You've gone west to find everything, or me, and look at girls the way I look at girls who are bad for me, like a desert through slatternly windows. This is America. The big pricked statues, statuary, and their old growth knowing. In the end, spoiler alert, we're both after the wrong bandit. The bank gets robbed. The two women who should be lovers but aren't arc their caddy like a rainbow into the lavish vaginal canyon at the last moment. The whale gets away. Faulkner's pretend mother doesn't get the burial she deserves. We have to choose between Liz Taylor in a kerchief or James Dean with his shirt stuttered open, and we can't.
Thank you. Yes.
Yay, well done.
So much fun to read that.
I know I wanted to too. I think we all wanted to. I'm sure we all. All that wonderful Americana, huh?
And KVM, to your earlier point too, like it's so dependent on texts outside of itself for the resonant echo chamber it creates, right? Like, yeah. So I'll follow up on that. So full disclosure, when we were looking for poems from the slush pile, or for the slush pile episode, this came from some of our interns here, well, from Abu Dhabi, from NYU, they're scattered across the globe. And we had such an interesting conversation about the allusions in this piece. And it's really what helped us, reach out to July and see if she'd let us talk about it on the podcast. So the last chunk of it, right, the sort of the riff there, right, of being after the wrong bandit, the bank, the two women who should be lovers but aren't their caddy, like it's not a given to people who are maybe not so familiar with American cinema. It's not a given that they would recognize that as Thelma and Louise.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it goes through. It's Thelma and Louise, As I Lay Dying,
Right.
Moby Dick,
Yeah.
and Giant.
Right.
Right. But I do wonder, like, does someone under 30 like get those? Or do they have it? I mean, because we grew up in a time when there was, because before the internet, you needed reference books, and reference books required people to have a kind of canonicity. because you had to have, you know, X number of, it wasn't like IMDb where the space is limitless and anything ever made anywhere. And also people should check Marion Wrenn's IMDb page because she has one. Slushies, in case you did not know, Marion Wrenn is a film star. But yeah, I mean, I think that the relationship of a younger generation to popular culture is quite different than older Americans, which I guess I now have to count myself among.
I think Slushy's under 30. Please respond and let us know those references.
Marion, what did the intern say? I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
So it's so funny. They echoed Kathy, right? They were like, you know what? I didn't know necessarily that was Thelma and Louise, or maybe one of them was like, I think I see that as Thelma and Louise, right? And I was like, well, does it push you out of the poem? Does not knowing that make it not pleasurable to you? And they were like, no, it's interesting to learn like what those references are. They were actually hip to earlier references, like the bull and the damned woman, right? Or I wonder if where they keep the half bull man and you shotgun back. I've spent my life asking that. Like they were so, it's so funny that like Greek mythology is more available to them than American pop culture is, right? And the sort of like assumption that it would be globally accessible, right, is an American pride, but the poem's called American literature, right? So it's sort of really working within its own boundaries, right?
Right. And I would bet that, I mean, they at least know of James Dean. They at least know of Faulkner, right? If they haven't read specifically As I Lay Dying. I mean, The Whale Gets Away might be too fast to fly by them. But I love talking about that kind of stuff with my class, like does the topicality of a piece. I teach a poem of Teresa Leo's, in which she references Alanis Morissette and Elaine from Seinfeld. And it's always so fun to see if they know, if they care to know, you know, like all that stuff. It's one of the reasons, I teach it for several reasons, but the pop culture references are one of the reasons why I pull that one out all the time, you know. Ironically, I think Marion raptured.
Yeah, Marion.
That's something. She read the poem and she just raptured. Alex, you've been a little more quiet this time. What do you say?
No, because I was saying, like, I know who Liz Taylor and James Dean are, but Giant was just, like, one step away from my pop culture knowledge. Like, I kind of got, like, I'm trying to figure out, this is when I'm still trying to figure out, like, because I love a lot of the lines. I love We Are All Sons of Bullet and Damn is just such a great line. Just,
yeah.
And like, I get the initial image. I'm just like still trying to like get a tighter grasp on like the entirety of the poem where it all kind of fits together. Because like, as Marion was saying, and I'm stalling, hopefully she'll get back. Like the poem kind of literally shifts after that line. I like I'm trying to figure out like as a poem, so I'm trying to figure out like why that's visually it's presented that way too, like, so yeah. And it's also the American literature of the West in a way, but not at the same time, because you have the Route 66, you have Thelma and Louise, you have Giant, but you also have Faulkner, and then you also have Moby Dick, and then you have Greek literature. So I'm like, I picture the Grand Canyon, but I also picture ocean and Greek and Ireland at the same time. It's a lot.
Well, you know, I hear you about it feeling like we're driving west, and that starts with Route 66, but that's already America, right? That's American to drive.
Yeah.
Country, right? Like all it just I don't know, it's still resident.
Well, it's weirdly phrased because I the first time I read it, I thought we were on Route 66, and then it says Route 66 version, the Route 66 version of June Cleaver, and you know, you can read that one way, that they're on Route 66 and this is the billboard, or you can read it as like this is the Route 66 version of the billboard. This is the billboard you would expect. And I have to, I mean, when I first read it, I was really confused by the Minotaur. Like, I was like, where did they keep the Minotaur? Like, what? And then I realized, like, oh, America's the labyrinth, right? This is the place you have to find your way out of. Like, this is like, you're trapped in this maze. And I kind of like that. And I have to admit, like, Route 66 has a special place for me. Like, I have driven Route 66, like, as a child with my family, and it's kind of amazing. Like, it's kind of, it's so weird. I mean, it's this, you know, like, I don't know what it's like now, but it's all ghost towns and like billboards and diners and mules having sex silhouetted against the sky in a way that you don't want to watch with your parents.
Oh, I mean, I definitely get the sense there is an odyssey here, though, right? We are driving, so you know, there's enough clues. We are actually going west, whether we're on 66. I think we're on 66.
What did you think about the coffee in cups so thin? Sorry, I'm cutting everyone off today.
No, it's fine.
What did you think about the coffee in cups so thin that Joe becomes us and we never regain our human shapes?
I feel like I've had that coffee though, because you get Dunkin' Donuts, you get the small coffee. It's not the container that's thicker. So I feel like I know that feeling. Or like any just like, I don't know, like gas station coffee where it's just like, here's the cheapest cup we have. So I like that actually resonated with me, because I know that feeling where it's like, I'm the coffee now, like.
And somehow the coffee, like, you see your implication there too, Alex, that the coffee is crap too. The cup so thin makes me also think the coffee is that thin coffee you can almost see through instead of a good dark roast, you know, that it's cheap coffee, I think. And the becomes us and we never regain our human shapes, I just think they're drinking a lot of coffee on this odyssey.
Oh, it's the coffee that's thin.
No,
it was the cups that were thin.
It's the cups, but it can be read as the coffee.
Okay.
We had coffee in cups so thin that Joe becomes us. I'm saying I think both are there in that sentence, which implies everything Alex said. You know, highway coffee.
Highway coffee.
I got raptured there for a minute, and
I missed you.
Thank you. But it's so funny. I came back and it feels like we're talking ghost towns and Route 66, and to me, that thin coffee cup, thin coffee line, right? And we never regain our human shapes. On one hand, it makes me want to think about like T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland and, you know, all that there, right? But it also just it makes me feel like they're ghosts. Like if they're never regaining their human shapes, it's because they're phantoms too. It's like the road trip is because they too are, you know, shades, right? That thinness is them.
Yeah. Or that thinness is America, right? That like
right.
The United States is a stunningly recent.
Mutually constituted, you know?
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is the feeling that like it leaves me is one, like, you know, I want to go on a road trip. Like that's this feeling, despite like the whole messaging being how like thin and ephemeral and like kind of fake. I think a lot of this all is this manifest destiny, this kind of long story of ourselves. What I do think is interesting is like where the poem with the spoilers kind of decides to stop. Because for a lot of my students, for example, they haven't read Faulkner, but they have read like Yasmin Ward, and they've read Sing Unburied Sing, and then they know who Faulkner is through that. And yet this poem, what I think is really interesting about it, it feels contemporary for me in the beginning. But then when I get down to it lower, I feel like the story has stopped somewhere, like before my generation. And I don't know why, but I do think that's very interesting, because I don't think that kind of manufactured Americana, say how it was in East Asia after World War II, or even during like, I don't know, like the 80s or 90s, is the same kind of package that it looks like now. So I think that's really interesting. So I think it's like speaking to a certain audience about a certain period of time. Not that that makes it unenjoyable. Like I like all the card games and Jane Austen and stuff. Like I like that kind of stuff. But I just think that it's interesting where it chose kind of to stop the spoilers.
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of like the American century, right? That it sort of like stops in the 90s. That it sort of can't keep going, in part because like what Route 66 meant, and kind of like the emergence of American cinema as a global phenomenon, and like the emergence of, you know, kind of American hegemony, like through a kind of cultural project, which is Marion's dissertation, by the way, if you'd like to weigh in as the actual expert on what I'm saying. But no, I mean, I thought that bounding was like that it doesn't sort of get to, you know, like the X-Men movies, or, you know, kind of cultural productions from the 2000s that would have been as iconic as anything referenced. And by the way, I listened to a Faulkner book on tape. Make sure you have the car windows rolled up.
Right?
You do not want to be driving around with people hearing what you are listening to.
No, you do not. I listened to A Rose for Emily. I was like, what the? Hold on.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, okay, yeah, right. It was Deborah Winger reading A Rose for Emily. What I love about the what Samantha and Jason are saying too is like it's the double colon lead up to that list, right? Yeah. It's This is America, colon, the big pricked statues, statuary, and their old growth knowing. So statuary gets used as a verb there, right? Which is kind of funny, right? And then, but the statues are a list of buddy films or buddy stories, buddy narratives, right? And it's that sort of like the pairing, the being on the road, the like that sort of like internal dislocation, internal diaspora, internal pursuit. That's in the chunk of texts at the end as well. So I kind of love how like the first set of allusions does invoke a kind of labyrinth, and then the second list is like just looping inside the labyrinth, looping inside the.
Well, and I liked, I mean, I was a little confused by the Faulkner, because I thought like Thelma and Louise and Giant and Moby Dick all have this really strong queer subtext. And is there a queer subtext in Faulkner that I don't know about?
No, but every single, I don't know. That I
don't
know.
Me.
I will
Slushies,
say,
if you know about the queer subtext in Faulkner, call Jason Schneiderman and explain it to him.
Immediately. But they are all essentially like narratives of being in pursuit of something, right? And including as they're dying, is like, you know, they're burying their mom, right? So that seemed to be like the linchpin. It's like this pursuit, this movement, this road trip, right? And literally like losing the coffin in the river. My mother is a fish. Maybe that's the title of the episode. My mother is a fish.
Listen, I don't know when this was actually written, right? But This is America, the big pricked statues,
right,
made it fresh as fuck to me.
Right.
This is America. I thought of the Childish Gambino song.
Sure.
It was so funny that Samantha said like it turned to became a poem for a certain age group, because that was so fresh. This is America and the big pricked statues. The statues are coming down, not right now, right? Mm-hmm. And to even call them the big pricked one, like I hate to keep saying that word prick, but I am going to say it again.
It's a good word.
Think of white men holding their pricks, even. Do you know what I mean? Big pricked. That's what I see, is that hand on the dick kind of thing, you know? And so that intro to those older references, I thought were the very fresh references.
When I think of the biggest of the pricks, I think of the Washington Monument, the most, like, always gets quoted as the most phallic of the, which to tie actually back to, because that's shown in the Spider-Man Far From Home, which, what's his face is in, I won't say who because it's a fun scene, but where they go to the Washington Monument. So they have a similar conversation, like, who built the Washington Monument? So just tie that all together. American cinema.
Noted, Alex. Thank you.
Should we vote?
Oh.
We're ready?
Are we ready?
Okay.
Ready? 1,
Thumbs out.
3, go. Okay, it's in. Thank you, July Westhale. 2 for 2. Rock and roll.
All right, so let's pause right here and I'll make a note to Joe. Do you want to, it's like 10 to 6. We probably could do one more if you feel like we can. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do one more.
I say
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So we're going to do one more. We have still have Moon waiting in the wings. And
I'll read. Oh, go ahead.
great. No, great, Alex. Terrific. I was
I
going
just want to say moon because it's fun to say. Moon. Now there's snow on the ocean, which is meant to confuse us, and does, though not because we are unprepared for it, but rather because the sight of it reminds us of the static-hearted parts of our bodies as they prostrate themselves in years over yonder exploratory attempts to find warmth, not unlike sure-footed expedition, in the disappearance of everything ripe, now covered with snow's annihilating speeches, in the blank stares of our children as they amputate themselves from us, in the cloudscape of come forgotten to be enjoyed, on the snow of a down comforter at which we'd first begun, circle back to Exhibit A, in the cold expanse following, the question, am I like winter to you? In the unspooling that happens when I play a memory over again the too manyth time in the television's convex and prudish eye, in the snowy sound of overuse, in the way empty feels like brain freeze, in the brilliant and nearly neon white of the sign which mourns vacancy, even if everyone around us says off season, says they love the snow, the way it makes well-conquered land possible again.
Thank you, Alex. And, again, such a different structure to this one from the other two, entirely different. Marion mentioned that the second poem had such long lines, and then there was a really interesting use of space that we never talked about, and interesting punctuation that we never even got to. I loved how it ended with the double dash, the last poem, right? And now this one is one big thick block with medium-sized lines, and then a single line stands at the end. So, Slushies, you just got to go look at this.
Yeah.
I love the title Moon. I like Moon is such a good title. In part because the moon. Whose poem is "Whatever the Moon is what you have always meant." And like the Stein stuff about the moon is cluttered with all the things that poets have attributed it to years, and you have to like sort of wash it clean before you can get it in a poem again. And just Moon is just so wonderfully fresh. I really like Moon. It's a good title.
I mean, I guess what I really like about this poem is just like it captures that, well, at least the sense that I have whenever it snows, and it's like a really good snow, I guess, is where it's just like it changes the entire landscape. It's all, even in suburbs, it's all just all white, like snow, like the streets, the houses are topped in white. It's like the snow owns everything now, and I get that sensation from reading this, where it's just the snow is annihilating speeches, where it's like, no, it's mine now, the snow says, like, basically.
Sorry, I found it's Cummings. It's you are whatever a moon has always meant. Sorry, just had to get that in there. I love Am I Like Winter to You?
Yes, I love that.
It sounds like a question with no easy answer, really.
Oh, winter is my favorite season.
But
I know it's hard.
Right, at the same time, what would that mean to somebody?
My frozen heart.
Do you remember Billy Collins' Litany? right?
No.
Oh, you got to listen to it. It's a funny one. He says things like, you are the bread and the knife. You are the chalice and the wind, the chalice and the wine, but you are not the peaches on the tree. And you are absolutely not the, it
Yeah.
is all those things like that. I am the dove's cry at morn. It's very funny. I'm blowing it. Look it up.
I mean, in the cold expanse following the question of I like winter to you. And then the too manyth time is such a beautiful use of kind of like how we speak. And it looks so odd on the page, but it's sort of so well structured. It just kind of carries you through.
I really like this poet's craft in general. I feel like every move is so well placed.
And we talk about this a lot, that we kind of like, that sense of trust or not trust. And that it's really hard to kind of like break down that as a reader, you trust or you don't trust, that you kind of like enter the poem. And part of, what an education often looks like, right, is learning when and when not to trust. That beginning readers are often, kind of, they trust everything and they think there must be something wrong with them, or they don't trust anything and they think there's always something wrong with the writer. But like that sense of trust is so well established in all of these poems, and we're all kind of sharing this place where, like, we're carried through, and we just kind of want to go back to sort of like open up all of these spaces that are kind of like, flower buds that keep opening as you pay more attention. It's a terrible metaphor.
No. You know what? Thank you for that, because that's like from what we just keep talking about. I am like winter to you, and the unspooling that happens when I play a memory over again for the too manyth time. The crescendo with that builds up. Those last lines just everyone just gets me more and more unspooled in the best way. The build up there's such a passion all the way to the poignant sign of the off season. Says to the end. It's just gorgeous. Those last lines are so, I love the momentum.
Yeah,
I really like the end too. I think my favorite is this idea that while the sign, says vacancy, like what we're saying on the streets is off season. And for me, I feel like it kind of speaks to this moment too, right? And like how you approach something and how you can like approach the same time differently, even like in an official way and an unofficial way. And I just think that it's really gorgeous, because it's almost like she says, July says the well-conquered land possible again, but there's also something that like snow does with time that makes time conquerable in a way. And kind of poetry does that too in a way, I think, or it can when it's good. So I just love this poem. And I also love the form of this poem with this, because it's so tight and it feels like you're really entering into something. I'm really glad it doesn't feel or look airy. And I like that, because that's also the kind of snow I like. That's like really tense and tight. So I just think this is a gorgeous poem.
I have to agree with what you're all saying. I just want to draw our attention to the verb for the vacancy sign. That's like the third line from the end, and the brilliant and nearly neon white of the sign, which mourns vacancy.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, is that the right verb, right? It mourns vacancy, even if everyone around us says off season, right? Like it is so like the sort of white upon white, the gray upon gray, the snow on the ocean, like the way this poem creates that atmosphere on one hand, and then on the other, like the sort of the movement of the speaker's mind, right? And I just for because we can do it, I'm just going to read the first couple of lines up to the colon, right? Now there's snow in the ocean, which is meant to confuse us, and does, though not because we are unprepared for it, but rather because the sight of it reminds us of the static hearted parts of our bodies as they prostrate themselves in years over yonder, right? Like it tumbles, right? It invites you in, it's crystal clear, and then gets in this sort of like abstraction that is a little, it almost defies interpretation, but then it's like, of course, it's about the sense of nostalgia, embodied sense of ache, of time, timelessness. Like, holy schmazzoli. It's a powerful piece.
You just got the title. Holy schmazzoli.
Schmazzoli. I don't know how to spell it though.
I feel like I order that somewhere. The holy schmazzoli or whatever.
Holy schmazzoli. Okay.
Yeah.
How to say it just like you said it. Schmazzoli.
Right. Schmazzoli.
We'll just phonetically spell that. It'll be fine.
One of the things that I like about this piece is a small thing, but it's the static as noun thing. I saw holy
schmazzoli.
But static and the like I've heard static, like TV static, be called snow before. I love that little tie-in right there, and it like ties it up in the beginning and also at the end. So just love that little detail of that.
Yeah. The snowy sound of overuse. Yeah. Damn. I think we can flip thumbs. I think we're ready. We ready?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2,
Okay.
3, flip. Boom. You go, July. That's a second unanimous one. Woohoo! 3 for 3.
This is a momentous podcast.
This is momentous.
It is a momentous podcast. It is a momentous podcast. Would that we
Holy
had more
schmazzoli,
time.
it is. That's kind of how I feel about all 3 of these poems. Thank you so much, July Westhale, for letting us discuss them and pitter patter all over the place around them. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of the episode, believe it or not. Would that we had more time to continue to talk about all of July's poems. We will have links to her work and her books and her essays and poems in our show notes. And I really like talking about poetry with you guys. I wanted to say this earlier too. There's something about like poems that are so encrusted and layered and weighted with allusions are freaking delightful when you get to talk about them with people whose brains you love. Right? The way they sort of open and bloom and just keep giving to you, right? Like it's the poet, but it's you guys reading the poems too that give me such pleasure. So
absolutely. I think we abbreviated every one of these conversations. We could have talked and talked. We could still be on apples if we had the time, right? So yeah, so Slushies, let us know how we're doing, what you're thinking about the show, and how I'm talking to November Slushies right now. November Slushies.
November Slushies. Tell us
anyways. I hope it is.
Right. Tell us what you need, right? Like tell us, if you give us a listen and tell us what you need, right? If there's a way we can select poems and talk about them in ways that help make your...
You understand, in November Slushies, it could be a really better place.
I know.
I say that quietly. Because I don't fixing things anymore. I think of manifesting things.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Professor!
No.
You almost made it out, Jason. You almost made it out alive.
No. No, they're making a movie of The Secret.
We have to say goodbye. We have to say goodbye before it gets ugly.
Okay.
Love you guys.
Goodbye, Slushies.